Welcome to Funeral Potatoes and Wool Mittens, a show for people who embrace the warm and cozy spirit of everyday living in the northern Midwest. From the blog Random Sweets, I'm your host, Stacy Mergenthal. As South Dakotans love to road trip across the state, plus hundreds of thousands of tourists vacation here throughout the summer, this episode's for anyone who wants to learn more about and try 26 iconic dishes and drinks that define the Mount Rushmore state. If you're from the Midwest, you've probably already checked a lot of these foods off of your list. And even though I'm mostly talking about South Dakota foods, I was born and raised in South Dakota, I couldn't help but include a few iconic dishes from neighboring states like Iowa, Nebraska, Wisconsin, North Dakota, and Minnesota, which is where I live now. And I found some fun commonalities among foods that we all consider to be iconic in the upper Midwest, so we'll talk a little bit about those too. The South Dakota list includes foods with Native American influence like Indian tacos, fry bread, wojapi, and wasna, and Germans from Russia influence like fleishe, kuchele, and kuchen, to down-home comfort meals like the good old hot beef commercial, and beer-battered and fried walleye, to the sought-after watermelons that are grown in the sandy soil near the James River, the zebra donut in Centerville that's so good it has its own trademark, Dakota martinis and chokecherry wine, because we like to drink in the Midwest, to the liquid gold produced by the state insect, the honeybee. Whether this is your first time vacationing in the Black Hills and the open prairies, you're a local that's on a day trip, or you're riding in for the Sturgis motorcycle rally, I just hope that you find something new to eat or try as you're exploring the state's magnificent Midwestern scenery, landscapes, and all the activities here. In this episode, I'm referencing an article that I wrote and photographed for the Food Network for its collection titled State's Plates. I thought it'd be fun to talk about the delicious foods on a podcast episode that you can listen to while you're driving around the state, and maybe try some new ones if you haven't had all 26 of these. Now, it's just a list. It's not ranked in any particular order. And I linked to that Food Network article in the show notes if you want to follow along and look at the photos that are in the photo gallery. Plus, it's kind of fun to look at all 50 states' plates. So to get this list narrowed down to the 26, I did some research and I got a lot of input from locals. And you know locals have a lot of input. Since I grew up in South Dakota, I was familiar with many of these foods like lefse, chislic, and the SDSU cookies and cream ice cream, but there are a few that were new to me like tiger meat, pasties, and kolache. I'll share which two I was most surprised that I actually really liked. The one that I still dream about and highly recommend you try at least once in your life. The one that I now always try to eat when I'm in Rapid City. And then there's the one dish that I have not and will never eat. So gas up the car or the motorcycle and let's hit the South Dakota highways and back roads for a few of the state's most iconic and memorable dishes. The first iconic dish on the list is an ultimate comfort food, one that's most enjoyed on a frigid winter day. It is the hot beef commercial. We also know it as the hot beef sandwich, a hot beef combo. Some people just call it the beef commercial or simply the hot beef. It is 2 slices of white bread, and then you place slices or like shredded hot roast beef onto the white bread, make a sandwich, then cut it in half diagonally, slide it apart on the plate so there's a spot in the middle, where you're going to put a big scoop of homemade mashed potatoes and then ladle the beef gravy over the potatoes and the bread until it pools all the way to the edge of the plate. Then you know you have enough gravy to eat the whole thing. My earliest memories of this dish go back to when I was a kid. My great-grandpa John Hulsebus, my grandma Janet Moe's dad, lived in White. And I can remember occasionally, so we'd visit him quite a bit, but occasionally we would go to this little cafe just south of White on Highway 30, and we would eat there, and this is what I would order. So that's kind of the earliest I can remember. And then when I was in high school, I worked at a restaurant in Brookings called Dakota Inn, or as the locals called it, DI or D&I, and they had the most delicious hot beef that I can recall. The cafe was pretty cool. It had the booths and the diner counter in the front and then tables in the back. Of course, where they would have the Friday night fish fry and a salad bar. There was a little gas station attached to the building, and none of that is there anymore. It was across the street from the public swimming pool, and there's a whole different building there now. And I also like to make this with leftover turkey and turkey gravy. So at Thanksgiving, just make sure you have some white bread on hand, sliced plain old white bread, and then you can make a hot turkey commercial after Thanksgiving. So you can get this dish at most cafes and diners across the state. They have it on their menu. And when I was working on this project, I was given multiple recommendations to order hot beef at the Wheel Inn Cafe in Watertown. And I had never heard of it, so I was excited to go there, and it was really, really good. That's the picture that's in the Food Network project that I used. And I think a lot of tourists eat hot beef at the restaurant that's at Wall Drug on Interstate 90. So that's the place, of course, the big Wall Drug with the stores and a restaurant, people shopping there. It's a big tourist attraction. You know, it's the place with the free ice water. If you know, you know. And then I'm also part of this Facebook group called In and Around Brookings, South Dakota Food and Drinks. And just within the last week or so, somebody posted a question, asked, where do I get a hot beef commercial around here? And so it was fun because there's a couple places now that I know of that I'm going to want to try to eat at. Irene's Cafe in Hendricks, Minnesota. There's a place called Lemke's in Aurora. There's the Lake Preston Cafe in Lake Preston. Siouxland at Lake Poncet. And then in Brookings, the Pheasant and Cook's Kitchen, they both have hot beef commercial on their menu. And then in Volga, there's the Lucky Dog and the Valley. So moving on to the first of 4 dishes with Native American influence, we're going to talk about Indian tacos. Now, these are not as common of a menu item as hot beef commercials. So order one. If you see one on a menu, order it. So what it is there's a hot Indian fry bread that's a little bit crispy on the outside, but soft and pillowy in the inside. It's topped with refried beans and taco meat, and then all the fixings of traditional tacos like cheese, sour cream, lettuce, salsa, maybe onions and tomatoes, and then for those who like them, black olives. My earliest memories of Indian tacos were the hours long, probably, lines at the Brookings Summer Arts Festival in the Pioneer Park. And I've eaten Indian tacos at Cheyenne's Crossing. It's out near Lead, South Dakota. They have a stage stop cafe in their building. And they are known for their legendary large Indian tacos. Again, if you look at the picture online, that's where I took this one, and it is massive. It's a popular stop for motorcyclists during the rally, and in 2017, when I talked to them, they had sold more than 5,000 Indian tacos just during the Sturgis rally, which is about a week long. So the address is Lead, but it's out on the intersection of Highway 85 and 14A. It's kind of in that Spearfish Canyon area. But if you're hankering for an Indian taco on the east side of the state, there's a place in Sioux Falls called Watechable. And he has Indian tacos and then other fry bread menu items like wojapi, which we're going to talk about, and fry bread. We'll talk about it in just a little bit. Plus, you can buy his authentic fry bread mix and then make them at home. So that's Watechable. And you can also purchase the South Dakota-made wooden knife Indian fry bread mix in a box at grocery stores around the state. It's made in interior South Dakota, which is just on the edge of the Badlands. Then when you make it at home, you could do Indian tacos, but you also can do cinnamon and sugar or dip it in your rhubarb sauce, make breakfast Indian tacos, or I would probably just make it with some garlic and butter and then serve it on the side with pasta dishes. Next up is a sweet treat with Czech heritage. Kolache was brought to southeastern South Dakota by people who came here from Czechoslovakia as early as 1869. It is a Czech pastry made from yeast dough and then filled with a generous dollop of sweet fruit filling, like a cherry or apple, lemon. They have poppy seed, apricot, prune, strawberry, and then sometimes sweetened cheese, like a cream cheese or cottage cheese. It's sprinkled with a sweet glaze and a hint of streusel when it's warm out of the oven. I like to eat those around the circle of the filling so that every bite has the dough and fruit and glaze in it. Sort of like how people have a way to eat Oreos. The town of Tabor hosts an annual Czech Days in June, which of course includes a kolache baking demonstration and eating contest. You can get kolache at the Tyndall Bakery in Tyndall, and then also Pizza's Coogan Kitchen and Specialties in Scotland. They also make kolache, and they deliver to locations across the state. I know they do their Coogan a lot. I'm not sure how many places their kolache goes. Probably not as far, but that is in Scotland. Now, we've talked about Native American and Czech influence in South Dakota. This next one is in my Norwegian blood. We're talking about lefse. So we talked about lefse with my friend Jen Buse in episode 25 because she and her husband and her sister-in-law Amy, they co-own Lefse Ladies, and they make it each fall and sell it locally. So we talked a little bit about it there, and it's really best described as the Norwegian version of tortillas or flatbread, with the main ingredient being riced potatoes. It's a long project, takes a long time. You can't just whip it up in a couple hours, so usually takes a day or two, a long day, multiple people. You make the dough, and then you take the dough balls, and they're rolled out super thin using a heavy corrugated wooden rolling pin that is covered with a cotton stretch knit. And then the dough is cooked, that flat piece of dough is cooked on a special lefse griddle. The griddle is really large, like 16 inches, and it gets really hot, like 500 degrees. Then you use this long stick, it's a flat wooden turning stick, to flip it. And it's like 24 inches because you have a big piece of dough on there, so you're going to flip it. And lefse recipes and teaching how to make it, and often the equipment, is handed down in families around here from moms, grandmas, and aunts. Somebody knows how to make it, then they teach the other people how to make it and pass on their recipe. You can find it at some grocery stores and some bakeries, but it's not as common. And sometimes you can find it at farmers markets, especially around toward the holidays, Christmas, Thanksgiving. But one of the best places to buy lefse is at bake sales, especially if you can find a church bake sale in the fall or around Christmas. So now it's time to talk about the perennial vegetable that we use like a fruit in the Midwest, rhubarb. We chop up the long red stalks of rhubarb and bake it into desserts. It's really tart, so we add a lot of sugar and sometimes a little bit of lemon juice, and bake it into pies, breads, make sauce, muffins, crumbles and cobblers. We make cake and wine and even ice cream. So like at Sweet Science Ice Cream, it's in Edina, Minnesota. So I know we're talking about in Minnesota now, but owner Ashley Olds makes a seasonal flavor called rhubarb cinnamon almond. And it's a cinnamon amaretto ice cream with layers of local rhubarb compote and then cinnamon toasted almonds. And when she says local, she means local. So they have a plants to pints program where people can bring in their fresh stalks of red rhubarb to the shop on certain days in June, and then for every 10 pounds of rhubarb they bring in, they get to take home a pint of ice cream. And then she uses all that local rhubarb to make that rhubarb cinnamon almond ice cream. Super cool. And then Prairie Berry Winery makes a few rhubarb wines, Red Ass Rhubarb and Rosy Ass Rhubarb, and that's in the Mount Rushmore and Crazy Horse area. And then Sade Vineyard, which is west of Volga, they make rhubarb and a strawberry rhubarb wine. Then if you want to try rhubarb in a pie, one of the coolest places to go is the Purple Pie Place in Custer, which is not too far from Crazy Horse Memorial. And they have 4 different pies to try with rhubarb. There's just straight up rhubarb, strawberry rhubarb, raspberry rhubarb jalapeno, and bumbleberry, which contains rhubarb and then a couple of different berries. And then Leola, South Dakota hosts an annual rhubarb festival, usually the end of June. And Leola is about 40 miles northwest of Aberdeen. Now, the first protein on the list, that's not drenched in gravy, is chislic. Authentic chislic is bite-sized pieces of mutton or lamb, grilled or deep fried, but most places around here serve it as beef, like a USDA prime sirloin. But at Meridian Corner, just outside of Freeman, they serve it the traditional way as mutton or lamb, with a side of crushed saltine crackers and then shakers of Greek seasoning and garlic salt. Moving on to the delicacy made by the state insect, the honeybee. Honey is the 7th iconic food on our list. There's a lot of honey producers in South Dakota. 80 Honey is the largest. I'm not sure if it's still, but a few years ago, 80 Honey, they're from Bruce, South Dakota, was the largest beekeeping operation in the United States, and I suspect they still are. At one time, South Dakota was the 2nd largest honey-producing state next to North Dakota. It now ranks 6th due to a lot of factors, including drought, pesticide use, their loss of habitat, and then there's a real problem with adulterated or synthetic honey. That's a whole nother episode. And we'll do one hopefully with 80 Honey themselves. It's pretty easy to find local honey at shops and farmers markets in the area. You can order from some of the vendors or the producers online. And I know that 80 Honey has theirs online in the bags and the pouches. They have honey sticks. And what you really should try is lefse that has peanut butter and honey, and then you roll it up. All right, so here I have a fun fact. There are 2 foods that made Iowa's and Nebraska's lists. I bet you can guess what one of them is. Well, one of them is breaded pork, and yes, you guessed it, the other one is sweet corn. Okay, so the next 2 dishes, fleishe, and kuchen, are rooted in the Germans from Russia food culture, which you find common around here and in North Dakota. So fleische is like a hamburger, but in a hand pie. It's a pocket of flaky dough, and it's filled with seasoned ground beef and onions, and then it's deep fried. So Germans from Russia introduced fleische to the southeast communities of Menno, Freeman, Viborg, and Parker. So again, Meridian Corner down in the Freeman area has it on their menu, but I did not have luck finding it on other menus in the state. So if you know of other places that have fleische, let me know. But in searching for other restaurants that serve it, I did find a recipe on SouthDakotaMagazine.com from Rita Hoff, who at the time of the article, I think it was in 2011, she was the owner of Open Door, which was a cafe in Menno. And it was, unfortunately, then I read further in a different article, and that was destroyed by a fire in 2017, and it's no longer there. It never reopened. But we do have the recipe, and I will share that in the show notes, so we can make fleischkugel at home. And South Dakota went so far as to name this next item as the state's official dessert. Kuchen, meaning cake in German, is sort of a cross between cake and kind of a pie crust, like the bottom part of a pie crust. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's spread with fruit and custard, and it's baked. And the classic fruits that are in there are usually prune and peach, but then there's other flavors people really enjoy, like cherry, strawberry rhubarb, sweet raisin, cottage cheese, blueberry, pumpkin, and raspberry. And I hope you've already listened to those episodes that I did with my sister-in-law, Betsy, and her husband, Russell. I think they're numbers 22 and 23. But in both those episodes, we talked about kuchen, specifically Russell's aunt Henrietta's kuchen. His family then shared her recipe with me, and I was able to make kuchen for my first time using rhubarb for the first time. And I'll post that recipe soon because it was really delicious. And then I'm also going to link to Pete's Kuchen Kitchen and Grandma's Kuchen. Now, Grandma's Kuchen is made in Ashley, North Dakota, but they do sell it in locations in South Dakota. And then you can also get it at Tyndall Bakeries. So if you like these, you should check out the Germans from Russia Food and Culture Facebook page, because they always have yummy, delicious foods and they post the recipes with them. It's time to talk about a vegetable. Well, other than rhubarb that we treat as a fruit. We're talking about asparagus. The green stalks have sort of a fainty, grassy flavor, but we all love asparagus so much. People grow it in their yard, in their garden. They can also just grab a few bundles of asparagus at the farmer's market. And then at some places, you can pick it at the pick-your-own farms, like a Sanderson Gardens outside of Brookings. But if you're ever wondering why people are wandering around in ditches, usually carrying a bucket or a pail, in the springtime, they're likely gathering wild asparagus. And whether it's on their property or not, they are picking wild asparagus. And people are pretty territorial and secretive about where they pick the spears. Again, whether or not it's on their property, they'll go out, they'll pick it, and they don't tell anybody where they're getting it. We use asparagus in a lot of savory dishes like tarts and pasta dishes, salads, soups. It's really good served alongside a grilled steak. And then Pasta salads, so it's a cold pasta salad. Some people will pickle asparagus. It's really good in omelets for breakfast and on flatbreads and lots of other ways. But one of our favorite ways is to fry it in a little bit of bacon fat, olive oil, and butter, and then sprinkle it with a pretty generous amount of coarse sea salt. And then if I have a lemon, I'll do a little spritz of lemon. And we fry it until it's crispy and then eat it when it's hot. So we're usually making a big meal. We're frying up the asparagus. We eat it as it comes out of the pan, make a few batches, and we kind of are just eating it as we're making our meal because in order to keep it crispy and hot, you just have to eat it right away. So that's my tip. So next up is chokecherries, also called aronia berries or black chokecherries. They have really been a long treasured food. They're a staple to Native American tribes across the plains. The early spring flowers of the chokecherry supply honeybees with nectar. So if we have a lot of chokecherry flowers, then there comes in for the nectar for the bees. People usually use these tart berries to make jams, jellies, syrups, wine, butter, wojapi, and wasna, which we'll talk about those in a minute. I remember my dad making chokecherry jelly, and to this day, in my mind, I think chokecherry jelly is my very favorite, even though I don't get it very often. But the berries are really full of antioxidants, and Sade Vineyard, which they make chokecherry wine, but they also make aronia juice, and they sell it online and then at some grocery stores and markets in South Dakota. So that's a pretty healthy juice to drink. So the dish that I want to try to get to eat at every time I'm in Rapid City is the pasty. So I go to Harriet and Oak, which is in kind of the downtown area of Rapid City, for their breakfast pasty made by King's Pasties in Lead, South Dakota. And that one has ham, egg, potatoes, cheese, green pepper, and onion. So when the miners came from the Cornwall region of England, they came over to South Dakota to work at Homestake Mine in Lead, which is closed now, but they came to mine, and they brought with them this savory meat pie. It's pretty large. It's handheld like a calzone or an empanada, but it's pretty big and sturdy. It's a filling meal. Taking those down in the mines, they withstood those long days underground. And Cornish pasties actually also landed on Wisconsin's iconic food list for the same reason. Bonnie King formerly owned King's Pasties, but her granddaughter Michelle Loken and her husband Orrin run it now. So Harriet and Oak is owned by Black Sheep Group, and they also serve King's Pasties at Blackbird Espresso in Spearfish. And then in Spearfish, you can also buy King's Pasties at the Spearfish Butcher Shop, which is out on East Fairgrounds Loop. I see that there's another place out there on West River, as we call it, but in Deadwood, called Lulu's Bomb Diggity's Pasties and Coffee Shop. So I have not tried them there, but I'm sure they're delightful. And then the members of Christ Episcopal Church in Lead, they shared their recipe that they use when they do their annual pasties fundraiser. And so that recipe is in South Dakota Magazine also, and I'll share a link to that in the show notes so that you could try to make those at home. I would love to try to make them at home too. And then it's really funny. So there's a show, Dakota Life, and they did an episode called From Cornwall to the Hills. And there's an elderly lady in there. Her name is Evelyn Murdy. And she explains how to correctly pronounce pasty. And she shares that pasties are something exotic dancers wear. It's a pretty fun video. So you get to watch them make some pasties, and I'll link that in the show notes as well. So the next one up is wojapi. This is the second Native American dish on the list. I really need to keep a jar of this in my refrigerator at all times, but this is what I wrote for the Food Network. So I met the chef who was making it at Laughing Water Restaurant at Crazy Horse Memorial. His name is Chef Randy Janis, and he put it on the menu to honor his Native American heritage. The most authentic way to make wojapi is to take tart chokecherry patties, so chokecherries that are pounded into patties and then dried in the sun. Then you add sugar, water, and a little thickening agent like a cornstarch, and then boil it until it's thickened. And if chokecherries aren't available, wojapi is made with other berries that are available, like blueberries, strawberries, and blackberries. It's usually made in large batches and then served warm with a bubbly fry bread, which is up next on our list, for special occasions like ceremonies and feasts. I watched a really good South Dakota broadcasting show called Savor South Dakota, and there's a wojapi recipe that they share, and Mavis Tubles and Rachel Neva are making it, and it's really fun to watch them make the wojapi. So I'm going to link the video and the recipe in the show notes. There's going to be a lot of things in the show notes, but there's recipes and there's videos, and it's just super fun. So up next, yes, is the Indian fry bread, which is a hot, puffy bread that we already talked about because they're using those for the base of Indian tacos. It really continues to be a staple in Native American culture. They make it by hand with their family's secret recipe or secret way of making it. And it's really delicious dipped in the wojapi or buffalo chili, or just warm with a sprinkling of sugar or cinnamon and sugar and a drizzle of local honey. And remember, you can purchase the authentic Native American fry bread mix from Wooden Knife and Watecha Bowl. So it sounds like I need a break, huh? We're just over halfway with this list. So I want to share a few of South Dakota's iconic dishes that are also on the list of our neighboring states. The hot beef commercial is also on Iowa's, although their listing says sometimes mashed potatoes. I've never known the hot beef commercial to not have mashed potatoes. Fry bread tacos, or Indian tacos, are also on North Dakota's list. They also call them Navajo tacos and ufda tacos. Another one is lefse. South Dakotans aren't the only ones who like their grandma-rolled, sugar-sprinkled lefse. Minnesota and North Dakota embrace the Norwegian staple also. Rhubarb. I didn't see plain rhubarb on another list, but strawberry rhubarb pie made North Dakota's list, plus strawberry rhubarb is named as a popular flavor of kuchen in North Dakota. And then kuchen. South Dakota may have declared this as their state dessert, but the creamy German dessert is just as popular and on North Dakota's list. And then the last one, chokecherries, is on South Dakota's list. If you hadn't heard of chokecherries before today, you know now. In North Dakota, they only mention chokecherry wine, but I suspect they use it for jams and syrups. So I am beginning to see why people think of North Dakota and South Dakota as the Dakotas. It's like we're twins. Okay, so now we're on 15. So on to the one that I was scared to try it. It's one of them that I was scared to try, but I ended up really liking it. It's buffalo. So in addition to the 1,400 bison roaming Custer State Park, South Dakota is home to several buffalo ranches, and the meat is used for steaks and jerky, and then it's ground for dishes like burgers and tacos and chili. For this project, I dined at Black Hills Burger and Bun in Custer. Now, I like my meat fully cooked, so my burgers tend to be dry. But the buffalo burger, like I said, I was hesitant to try it, but the buffalo burger was fully cooked and it was still so juicy. It was delicious. I would definitely eat one again. And bison burgers and steaks are pretty common menu items on local restaurants across the state, and I know that the Pheasant in Brookings has bison burger and steak on its menu. So from buffalo to ice cream, South Dakota State University celebrates inventing cookies and cream ice cream. Now, I grew up in Brookings, South Dakota, so I've eaten a lot of it, and no matter the debate on its birthplace, I love it. And if you look at the picture on the Food Network article, I have to thank my daughter who agreed to be the model for the ice cream in that picture. She was still in high school. I must have been able to bribe her with something, so that was pretty cool. So before we finish with our last 10, these are the 5 neighboring dishes that I want to try. So let me know if you've eaten them or where the best place is to find them. So here they are. In Minnesota, which I live in Minnesota now, and I've already eaten a lot of the ones on their list, like Swedish meatballs, wild rice soup, hot dish, lefse, and mini donuts, but I don't think I have ever tried a Juicy Lucy. And I know it's a hot debate in the state about who invented the Juicy Lucy in Minnesota and who has the best Juicy Lucy. But basically, it's a burger that has cheese stuffed in it, and I want to try it. So, Juicy Lucy from Minnesota. In Iowa, the original Made Right sandwich from Taylor's Made Right in Marshalltown. I've heard of it before. I've heard people talk about it, and it's a loose meat beef sandwich. And I think it has some onions, and it's just served on a bun. But around here, we talk about taverns and barbecues, but this has no sauce or anything. It's a loose meat beef sandwiches, and I want to try the original Made Right. And I believe Taylor's is still open, and it's in Marshalltown, Iowa. Now, over in Wisconsin, the one I want to try, I don't even know how to pronounce. It's Roesti. I'm going to say roasty. Rosti? I don't know what it is, but the dish is a crusty golden round of butter-fried grated potatoes with onions and melty Swiss throughout. So when I see the pictures, looks like really super crispy hash browns in kind of this round plate size mound, and there's Swiss cheese throughout. And they serve this at the Glarner Stube in New Glarus. I obviously don't know how to pronounce my Swiss words, but I want to try the potatoes anyway. Up in North Dakota, okay, there were only a couple on the list that I haven't eaten, but the one I want to try is cheese buttons. Germans, Polish, Ukrainians, and Czechs, they call them by a lot of other names, but it's all the same thing from my understanding. They are plump little dumplings stuffed with a creamy cottage cheese, then boiled or pan-fried in butter, topped with cheese, scallions, or sautéed onions, and then fresh or sour cream. So I'm feeling like it's kind of on the lines of a pierogi, but I didn't look at a recipe, so I'm not quite sure if they're made with the same things, but I want to try the cheese buttons. And then the last one is Nebraska. They have what's called beer-battered, also known by the name Runza, which I believe there's a restaurant, like a fast food restaurant down there called Runza, and they serve these. So Germans from Russia brought these, and it's a meat pocket in a soft, slightly sweet bread with a mixture of cabbage, onions, ground beef, and then sometimes cheese. So the beer-battered is what I want to try there. Okay, so we're going on to 17 now, and this is a little bit healthier dish, and it's also good for those summer seed spitting contests. It's watermelon, and really just in general, melons like cantaloupe and muskmelon, because there's just something special about the watermelons that are grown near the James River. Many of them grown by producers it's the Sanborn County around Forestburg, South Dakota. And the melons from this region are just well-loved, well sought out, and that the town of Forestburg even hosts an annual melon festival in August. But really, it's the hot summer days and those cool nights that create ideal conditions for growing watermelons, plus the sandy soil that's on top of the clay in the river valley really yields a sweetness that can only be found in the watermelons grown in that area. The sweet treat I dream about is specific to one bakery. The zebra donut is so good that this is the one that they've trademarked the name. I describe it as a melt-in-your-mouth, marbled chocolate and vanilla donut that's fried, dunked in a sweet glaze, and hand-dipped in homemade chocolate frosting. Okay, people say melt in your mouth all the time. I try not to say that because it's overused. But when I put this warm donut in my mouth, it melted. So I have to describe it that way because that's what it does. And it seriously is dunked into the glaze, but then it is also frosted or hand dipped into this homemade chocolate frosting. Again, their special recipe. It's formerly called the Royal Bake Shop in Centerville, South Dakota. And Keith and Janine Ellis owned it, and he's the one that came up with the zebra donut, the recipe, and trademarking it. They later changed the bake shop name to Ellis Donuts, and now they've retired and sold. And so now I'm pretty sure that the bakery is called Zebra King Donuts, and it's located on Broadway Street. Centerville's a pretty small town, and that is the place that I think if you try one donut in your whole life, or if you're ever in that area, Even if you're an hour away, it's worth the drive in the morning early before they run out to get and try a zebra donut. And then another iconic donut stop is at Wall Drug in South Dakota, in Wall, South Dakota. They have homemade cake donuts that people stop just to get the donuts. It's very iconic. They're good, but they're nothing like that zebra donut. So those are just a cake donut with either a chocolate, a maple, or a vanilla icing. And again, you can get your hot beef sandwich and free ice water when you're there too. Well, we wouldn't be in an agriculture state without the next two iconic South Dakota foods. So there's the Dimmock Dairy Colby cheese. You know, of course, that cheese made it onto Wisconsin's list, but South Dakotans love their cheese too, especially when it's made the old school way with milk produced by local dairy cows. So at Dimmock Dairy, in addition to traditional Colby cheese, they make all kinds of Colby flavors like a Colby Jack, Colby Ranch, pepper Colby Jack. There's a bacon and onion and then a garden medley. And of course, they make all different kinds of cheddars and Monterey Jacks too, but you'll want to try those. And they have cheese curds and tubs or, the cheese spreads, like a tub of cheese spread. Dimmock is just south of Mitchell, and they built a new store in the last few years, so you can actually go down there and shop in the store. But you can also find it at grocery stores around and liquor stores and convenience stores. And speaking of cheese, I just also want to mention Stensland Family Farms, which technically I think their cows are milked at their family farm operation near Larchwood, Iowa, but they have a substantial presence in Sioux Falls in the area, and they support communities. So I just wanted to mention Stensland Family Farms. They have stores in Sioux Falls, plus they operate the Falls Overlook Cafe at Falls Park. So you can try their ice cream and some of their products there as well. Moving on, steak. Well, sure, you can come to South Dakota without eating steak, but you'd be missing out. But not all steakhouses are equal, so really just be sure to ask the locals where they go for good steak. But be prepared, because with so many farmers and ranchers here, their answer just might be, well, in my own backyard on the grill, so ask for an invitation. Seriously, though, just ask around, and people will tell you where they get their good steak. For one of the best canyon Angus beef steaks in the Midwest, I went to Merle Arch's Cattleman's Club Steakhouse along the river south of Pierre. And Merle founded the steakhouse in 1986, but his daughter Cindy runs it now. The parking lot fills up quickly because people know about this. They come from all around. When I went there to talk to Cindy and take a few pictures of the steak and eat the steak there, that was my experience. Was it filled up, people came in, they were out in the parking lot before the door was even unlocked. And when we traveled out to Pierre for hockey, there was a couple times, I think for sure once, that I remember we all drove up there and the place was just too full and the wait was too long, and we did not end up eating there. So, well, we're down to the last 6 of the 26 dishes that are iconic to South Dakota. And here's another fun fact. Out of the 6 upper Midwestern states that I looked at, again, that's South Dakota, North Dakota, Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, Nebraska, North Dakota is the only state that Jell-O salad is included on. I was quite surprised. And the one thing that made the list on all 6 states is beer in one form or another. From craft brews from Surly Brewing in Minnesota to Lincoln Zipline Brewing in Nebraska, and Laughing Sun Brewing in North Dakota, to the beer cheese soup at the Old Fashioned in Madison, Wisconsin, which is made with shark cheddar and Huber Bock beer. So we like our beer around here too. Walleye is number 21. This is the other food I was hesitant to try. But if I could go back to Spring Creek Resort and eat the beer-battered and broasted walleye with their house-made tartar sauce again, I would in a heartbeat. I mean, I remember trying to take photos of the beer-battered fish, and it was so good that I kept eating it, and it was hot, so I was eating it. I wanted to eat it while it was hot, but I needed to take pictures, and I had grease all over my camera. It was a glorious experience. So, but, you know, the Missouri River is one of the best spots to fish walleye. Walleye is the state fish. And when I was at that restaurant, it's called now, I think, the Boathouse Bar and Grill, and it's at Spring Creek Resort. north of Pierre. 15 miles or a little more, maybe out of town north of Pierre, but you could order walleye off the menu, or you could bring, it was really popular, the fisherman, you can bring in your catch of the day and have it cooked at the restaurant. Now, I don't know if they do that anymore, but that was pretty cool. And walleye is, sometimes you'll find it on menus around here, but I know that I've heard that the Sandbar in Sioux Falls has really good walleye nuggets on their appetizer menu. So you could just try it at least there as an appetizer. And they also have sirloin chislic. So you could try 2 of the 26 right there. And we're down to the final 4 foods. And then there's 1 drink still too. Ring-necked pheasant is the next one. And pheasant hunting is really of economic importance to South Dakota. You're most likely to find pheasant as a menu item at upscale restaurants. And so at the pheasant restaurant in Brookings, their customers really wanted pheasant on the menu. And Michael Johnson, who's the manager, he researched and then discovered that pheasant salad was served to troops in Aberdeen as they left for World War II. And Aberdeen is a town in South Dakota. So he created his own version of pheasant salad and then added it to the menu, and it's still on there. So he starts with locally raised pheasant and then mixes it with dried cranberries, apples, roasted pecans, celery, green onion, and then sesame and olive oils, a little mayonnaise and seasonings. And then he puts that all between a layer of melted Swiss and grilled marbled rye. If you like pheasant, that sandwich is really good. So here's the last of the Native American dishes. I think we have 2. Well, no, just 1. So this is the last, and it's wasna, meaning all mixed up. And it's a traditional Lakota dish made of dried buffalo meat and berries. They're pounded with a stone. They're smoky and then just a little bit sweet because of the berries that are in there. They're gluten-free, dairy-free, nut-free. They're really good grab-and-go snack. I was able to find, so there's a South Dakota brand made Tonka, Tanka, that makes these bars, I think in Kyle, South Dakota. And I was able to find some at a convenience store, again, West River, but that's the only place that I looked. So I'm assuming they're probably available across the state. But it's a really good, just a little bit of meat and berries. And like I said, pretty healthy too. So we're on to our last drink, the Dakota Martini, also known as red beer. When I asked around for people's thoughts on iconic South Dakota foods and drinks, a lot of people said red beer or Dakota Martini, and I really had no idea what they're talking about. I don't really drink beer a lot, but my friend Carl Steggy, he owns the Cardinal Tap in Arlington, and he was kind enough to tell me a little bit about them, and then he poured me a few so that I could photograph the red beers in his beer garden for this project. And he said that if it's weak, the drink gets bitter. And so what it is a ratio, it's a precise ratio of 3/4 beer to 1/4 tomato juice. And then that's when he said if it's weak, it gets bitter. So most bartenders garnish it with green olives or pickle spears, and some Midwesterners even ask for a splash of green olive juice in that red beer. Now it's time for the one dish that I had never heard of, I have never eaten, and I never will. And my friend Christiane, if you're listening, I'm pretty sure that you are the one friend that I know that will eat this. Tiger meat. Now, all I really understand about tiger meat, other than it's not tiger meat, is that it's a raw mixture of ground beef with seasonings that supposedly sort of cure the beef, the raw beef. And then there's green pepper and onion. And people spread it on saltine crackers or butter crackers. That's about all I know, and I will not try it. But remember earlier I said that I like to have my beef fully cooked and dry? That is not tiger meat. How it came here, I have no idea. It's the Midwestern version of steak tartare. And I know that you can purchase it at Dakota Butcher and also Kessler's Grocery Store, which is up in Aberdeen. Both places only sell it to go because I think it's a health code thing that they only can sell them to go. I mean, that should tell you something, right? I don't know. We're on the last one. It's one of my favorites, mocha cakes. So it's called mocha cakes, but that name is sort of deceiving because they don't have coffee, they don't have chocolate. They're also known as gold bricks, nutty bars, blarney stones, and peanut bars, but they're really all the same. So they're usually rectangular, sometimes square, and it's a block of a light and airy white cake, and then it's frosted on all sides with a vanilla buttercream, and then they're rolled on all sides in lightly salted crushed peanuts. And the Flandreau Bakery in Flandreau, South Dakota, I mean, they have like a cult following. I am part of that cult. But people who grew up in anywhere in the area, I mean, that bakery, I can't remember if it's 100 years old yet, but getting close if it's not. It's been around for so long that people have just, and they've used the same recipe the whole time. So many people like it that when they do come back, they'll get a lot or send them home. I have purchased and put in the freezer because they freeze really well too. Because it's a little bit of drive for me, maybe 20 miles. But anyway, so Ed and Don Duncan, they owned that bakery for pretty much this whole time. Their dad opened it, and then they worked with their dad. In the last couple of years, they sold it because they finally retired. So it was open for a while after they sold it, and then it closed. And everybody was really sad. Of course, they have more than just mocha cakes, but everything they have there is delicious, and they make homemade breads and buns and all these different kinds of donuts. And anyway, now the community is really happy because the Flandreau Bakery is back open, and they are making the mocha cakes again. So, not that Flandreau Bakery is the only place. Like I said, they're known by those other names, and they can be found at a lot of old-fashioned bakeries across the state. I think Hy-Vee is popular around the Midwest. I think I've seen them in the Hy-Vee bakery case, maybe not, but I'm guessing they definitely can make them. That was the last one on the list. This is fun. Let's just go back and look at which other states have some of that second half of the South Dakota list in common with South Dakota. I already mentioned that pasties, Wisconsin has pasties. Again, for the same reason, the Cornish families came to work the mines in the early 19th century. Of course, they had Colby cheese on their list too. And then here we are back with the matchy-matchy from our friends in North Dakota. Buffalo makes an appearance on their list as bison steak. And then of the 6 states that I looked at, ice cream, well, all but Minnesota, actually. So of all the states that I looked at, all but Minnesota has some version of ice cream on their list. North Dakota mentions the Pride Dairy ice cream, and then also something called Whirl-A-Whip. It's a food item, I think, not a place. And then on Iowa's list, they had 2 ice creams on their list. One of them was Nutty Bars from the Nutty Bar stand inside of the Arnold's Park amusement park, which is at Lake Okoboji. And that was an ice cream stick, I think with vanilla ice cream on a stick, dipped in chocolate and then covered in nuts. And then also, of course, in Iowa, they had Blue Bunny ice cream because that's where that's made. And then in Wisconsin, it was actually frozen custard that made the list, not ice cream, but Wisconsin's got something there. And then South Dakota is not the only Midwestern state to have a university campus ice cream plant on their list. Nebraska does too. There's the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. It's the UNL Dairy Store. Now, in Wisconsin, they have the University of Wisconsin-Madison Babcock Dairy Plant, but that didn't make it onto Nebraska's list. And then Zesto also makes the list in Nebraska. Did you notice anything missing from this list? Did you happen to notice that hot dish didn't make it to the South Dakota list? I mean, we know it's iconic, but it didn't make it on this list. So North Dakota, they have tater tot hot dish on their list, and Minnesota has hot dish, but we know it's iconic, even if it's not on the list. So anyway, I had better get this episode wrapped up, or we're going to be here all day because I could talk about this for hours. Did you learn about a dish that you want to try? I really want to hear about it. And, let me know if you try those zebra donuts in Centerville. And tell me if they really melt in your mouth. Thanks for pressing play today and exploring iconic South Dakota foods with me. Remember, the links that we talked about, they're in the show notes. And if you have a minute, I would really appreciate if you would rate this podcast and write a quick review. Just 1 or 2 sentences is great. And thank you to those of you who have already done that. I really appreciate it. I hope you listen to episodes as you road trip across the Midwest this summer. Sweet wishes!